Chairman of the, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mike Berlin,
Here.
Laura Negro, Blake Ellefson, Pat Kinney,
Here.
Ron Stendor.
Here.
Has anyone heard from Laura or Blake?
No,
No, but we do have a quorum.
quorum is declared. Thank you. Going on approval of the agenda.
This
Is this an amended or is this the original agenda? Okay,
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve.
Ron Stender will second.
we have a motion by Pat, second by Ron to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Public comment, 3 minutes. You got Mike up there? Oh, okay. We're open mic for 3 minutes. Last call, open mic for 3 minutes. Thank you. Laura is now present. Approval, item number 4, approval of the minutes of January 19th.
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve.
Ron will second.
We have a motion by excuse me, Pat to approve, second by Ron. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 5, Mike and Steve, you're on financial consultant update.
Mike, do you want me to make you co-host?
Um,
Otherwise, I have the document on the drive here.
yeah, is Steve on here or did he drop off? He was on.
Steve here too. Yeah.
I'm on.
Oh, you are on, okay.
Yeah, if you want to share it, Dan, or give me co-host, I can do it too. Either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whoops. Okay, you're up, Steve.
Okay, let me get it here.
Yeah, what Steve's pulling up here is the budget status report for Ashland County for the first 3 months of the year. And this is a very high level look at the actual revenues and expenditures compared to budget. And Steve and I will both kind of walk you through this report. And I'll just give you some basic, the way we have it separated here, we have revenues at the top of the page, expenditures at the bottom or the second half. And then we separate it into, I think everybody knows you're budgeted on what they call funds, accounting funds. And we have tax levy supported funds in the first group and non-tax levy in the second group. And then actually an enterprise fund, the only enterprise fund is the third group, a highway fund, so. And it's being the 3 months of the year, you'll see we have a percentage there at the top of the page. Shows 25%, obviously 3 months, 12 months, you're at 25% of the year completed. So Steve, if you want to take it from there a little bit, I can add a little bit more about highway and some of the other things, but
Sure.
just to go over where we're at here, how each line works. So
Yep. No, so certainly. So just starting at the top here with the tax levy supported funds, general fund being the largest fund of the county. You might think, well, 13.6, it's not 25 there. What's going on there? One thing you'll notice is the county budgets for their shared revenue as being their day one. But in fact, the Department of Revenue will dole it out to you 15% in July and 85% in November. So these numbers, may not track appropriately because of that, because not all revenues come in 1/12 throughout the year. So we don't see anything abnormal there. There, there is I think a receivable for the law enforcement provided to the Bad River Group. And I don't believe that's recorded for the first 3 months, so that revenue is not in there. But I believe they have sent invoices for at least the first couple months. But that would be the only thing I think of note in the general fund. Mike, did you have anything to add to the general?
No, maybe just to point out, Steve, that you see we have the total budget of 11.2 million, and we take out the tax levy because that would distort our percentage compared to budget, because that's recorded as available basically day one. You get a good portion of it in January and February, and you get the rest in July and August, a smaller portion. But anyway, so we pull that out because it's not fair, or it doesn't give you an equitable comparison if we had that in there. So
Yeah,
anyway, that's why we use the non-tax levy revenues of 7 million to compare to your monthly budgets. So
yep. So then just kind of going down the row here, human services being the next fund. Again, very low percentage, but again, in our opinion, not unusual for the operation of the human services department. In such as, if you look at the expense side of human services at 20%, pretty much tracking with what, 1/4 of the year would be. Similarly, general fund, but on the human services side, of course, you're spending money under various programs and then billing the state and other entities for that reimbursement. And it generally lags, 60 to 90 days, I would say, is probably pretty fair number of days. And there aren't typically receivables set up for that during the year. At the end of the year, certainly the department would be setting up receivables to true up and match revenues, because their closeout process can go well into May and June before they're completely closed out. So you would want to book all that revenue at the end of the year. So then moving to the next fund, the County Road and Bridges Fund. So there are revenues for that, which you're at about 44%, which is actually higher than the 25% of the year. Probably our guess would be due to the snow this winter. The highway certainly has had their fair share of challenges there, I'm sure. And then
Steve, if I can just add there a little bit, actually.
Yeah.
Well, the revenues in that fund are the state aid that you get paid. I think it's 3 checks a year now, but it's also includes the $820,000 that the county budgeted to borrow for road construction. That 820,000 is in that number, and that's why it's over the budget percentage.
Yep.
That's the main reason. Yeah.
Yep.
So-
No, thank you.
Yeah.
So then I'll scroll down to the expense side of that. Hopefully this doesn't mess
Yeah.
anybody up. But on the expenditure side, about 11%, this would be the work that the county highway fund did for the county on the county roads, which would be the winter maintenance, probably to the biggest extent of the budget, as well as other road projects that would be in here for the summer. So again, may not track to a true 1/12. Law enforcement grants being the next one. You are currently, looks like, over budget there collecting revenues. And I think that's just due to, you had a $10,000 predicted grant, you collected 11,150. So nothing major there. On the expense side of that, looks like, they've spent roughly 18% of that fund's activity. Debt service. Again, this one here, the revenues are primarily your tax levy. So again, showing that being received day one. On the expense side, your debt payments for the most part have been made for the year, slightly above what was budgeted, but nonetheless within, I believe, what was expected for that fund. Going down the line, County Improvement Fund. Again, no tax, it's all tax levy in these two funds and no other revenues, so there's really not a lot to talk about there for the revenue side. On the expense side, I think just kind of normal stuff coming in. We didn't see anything that looked out of line there. For the non-tax levy funds, the trees and shrub fund, probably would be what we would see. The biggest thing in here is the tree and shrub sale that's ongoing. So people are sending funds in for that. And it looks like, the county hasn't paid for those yet, which is probably due on delivery. So within a couple 30 days of that date. So again, looks normal. Trying to think here if there was anything to note. I think land information GIS, I think was, I don't remember what the revenues were there, but it was normal looking, nothing abnormal there. Again, pretty well within the tolerances on the expense side, nothing unusual there. Your ARPA funds being at 0.1, I think what's typically happened here is the county will recognize revenue to the extent that you spend in this fund. So in the end, the fund will zero out. The revenues will equal expenditures to whatever extent you spend on the expense side. Revenue will be recognized. Obviously, in this case, that recognition of revenue wouldn't occur each month. It would probably be, semi-annual or annual. And I think the only revenues in here are interest on the funds you've already received. And
Steve, there's a
We got
question.
here.
yes, go ahead.
Could you explain on the forestry and recreation, the county bought nearly 200 acres here.
That deal has not gone through yet. The state is ready to sell now, so it'll go through then.
So where will that show up in this budget? Will it show up under forestry and recreation? We're taking out a 1-year loan for that, but where's this gonna
Right.
show up?
That won't show up until next year's budget because the money's being paid next year.
We won't actually pay for it until next year?
Correct.
When's the transaction going to occur?
Transaction's going to occur probably within the next month. So we'll get the revenue this year, but the expense won't occur till next year.
So, yeah, I'm not, I think I heard a little bit about that transaction, but not fully up to date on it. So you're purchasing some land, and is the revenue coming through a loan from the state or?
It's coming from a loan from Northern State Bank.
Okay. So you'll purchase the land this year with the proceeds of the note and then pay the note off next year, or?
Yeah, next year like we do with our debt levy.
Okay. Yeah, so to answer your question, it probably would be in that forestry recreation fund, but we would show the revenues coming in from the loan proceeds and then the payment to the property owner for the purchase of the property. So then every year thereafter, there would be debt payments that would be either levied for or some revenue source used to fund those debt payments. I'm not sure what the plan is there, Dan, if it's just going to be a general
It's
fund.
It's going to be part of our debt levy.
Okay, so just general obligation tax levy to pay that off. So yeah, those I would think just off the cuff here would probably be in that fund when they occur.
Yeah, Steve, if I can just jump in a second, I assume that's a fairly large amount and it wasn't considered an adoption of the 23 budget. Is that right, Dan?
Correct. It's not a fairly, it's 200,000 basically.
200,000. Well, so I would think here's what you'd want to do. And actually probably when you approve the purchase, you would amend the budget to put 200,000 more in revenues in that fund coming from debt proceeds and a $200,000 expenditure. Otherwise, that fund, and that's
Right.
probably the usual way of handling something like that.
Yep, good point. Otherwise, if it did get recorded in that fund, it would show that you more than quadrupled your revenue estimate.
Yeah, right, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'd make a budget amendment to provide the revenue. And then, increase the expenditure, so.
Yeah, and thank you, Dan, for interrupting me. If anybody does have a question, just feel free to, I can't see you, but let Dan know and he can interrupt and we can get your question answered right away. So are there any other questions at this time before I kind of continue? Okay, so then just kind of going down the line here, again, I think we're to the land conservation probably. This is another area where land conservation will provide services for whatever programs they have within their grants. And then we'll bill for the grants periodically throughout the year. I think some of them are done on an annual basis too. I know we noticed that at the end of the year that Mary Jo had some grants that needed to be accrued for revenue. So again, not abnormal to see possibly expenses exceed the revenues during the year. So inmate wellness is a new fund that is money that is coming in from the canteen purchases and commissary within the jail. There was money turned in last year. I don't believe there was any money turned in yet this year. There was some small expense there. But the purpose of that is to segregate those funds that are earned, so to speak, off of selling things within the jail to use for jail activities. Moving on, then there are capital funds within the budget, which is mainly your debt levy. Those typically are borrowed in December, I believe, of the year before, and then so you have the resources within the year. So I don't know. Some of those have been allocated out, I believe, to highway, and I think some were spent within the fund. So that's what your actual is here on the expense side. So nothing unusual there. Then we kind of put miscellaneous fund activity. There are several funds that are rather small for things that the county tracks, but didn't feel like they were necessarily worthy of taking up a line here. But certainly if anybody has any question about something you didn't see on here, this would include like the dog fund and, things like that are smaller in nature.
Steve, we have another question.
Oh, yeah.
Steve, this is Pat. So I was looking at the capital improvement plan from a year ago, and there's language in there about what will be included in the capital improvement plan. And the reason I was looking at that is later in this meeting, we're going to look at squad cars on a lease program. So I was trying to figure out, if those squads were part of the capital improvement plan, and looking at the language in the capital improvement plan, they would not be included in that capital improvement plan. So when I look at this and you have the word capital in there, so capital funds, are we using the language from the capital improvement plan to when we have capital funds in what you're showing right now? Is it limited to what's consistent with the language in the capital improvement plan? Or are there other things defined under capital that go beyond, and I'm thinking squads and highway equipment and stuff in particular, that go beyond what's in the capital improvement plan?
Yeah, I believe what is currently being shown here would reflect directly your capital improvement plan. So those items that were indicated in that plan. So I think Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the county were you borrowing for squads or purchasing directly within the sheriff budget?
Yeah, we borrowed about 50,000 for a squad car. So that was in debt levy. So when we get to the next issue, I'll explain how it's going to work. But yeah, we did borrow the money.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
let me ask you that same question another way. Is there an intersection between what we see on capital funds and the spreadsheet you're showing and in the document for the capital improvement plan?
Oh, to show what makes up the 1.6 million? Is that kind
Well,
of,
is there anything, are these two distinct sets, or is there some intersection or overlap between what you call capital funds here and what we see in the capital improvement plan?
I believe there was a list that adds up to that was directly related to your capital plan.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it
it's-
should match up. It should match up, Pat. Yeah. So,
So it's either in the capital plan, or if it's showing there as capital funds, it's in there, but there's nothing that's common or in both.
there's nothing, I don't believe there's the capital plans, you know, it being the first year that you adopted it last year. You know, it probably wasn't finalized until the budget was adopted, your total budget. And so everything included in that is in this list here.
So I take it the document you have, Pat, that says capital plan, like for year one, doesn't match up to the 1606. Is that what you're seeing? Or,
What I'm not clear on is, you know, let's talk about computers then. So if we're buying computers, that would be part of a capital budget? Typically, but it wouldn't be in the capital improvement plan.
Well-
Whereas,
And Danny, help us out here a little bit, because I
Yeah.
think there was some IT equipment in the
Yeah.
capital.
Yeah, there was, we did put some IT equipment into the debt. Into
Right,
cap,
and-
into
and-
long-term debt.
And many governments are not, in a sense, capitalizing like small PCs or, you know, $800-900 computers. And they're considering that an operating expense. I believe your county is doing that same thing. So
We're,
those would not be those would be in the general fund operating budget, or, you know, wherever they fit.
no, we're borrowing for PCs.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you can do that, you know, if you're buying 10, 20, whatever, and a cumulative is a big number, but a single purchase of one, that generally wouldn't be. So,
No, we're budgeting for like 20 or 30 at a time.
okay.
So let me go back to the capital funds showing on the spreadsheet there. When the word capital is used there, is that used exclusively for things in our capital improvement plan? Or does it also, or is it only for things not in our capital improvement plan? Or does it potentially contain both?
The intent is to include it to match up to the capital improvement plan. So,
Yep.
and not include things that wouldn't be in there. That's the intent of it. But it's, and this gets somewhat a little bit unique here. You're borrowing in, you know, generally December for your purchases the subsequent year. And so the revenue here is really matches up to the expenditures, but you may actually be borrowing a different number at the end of the year. So,
yeah, so these numbers, your capital plan, you're funding with your, what you call the debt levy. And like Mike is saying, typically the county borrows that, takes out a loan in December for 366 days, so that it qualifies as long-term debt. But then you typically pay it off in February of the next year and levy for those amounts as part of your debt levy. So it's not restricted to your operating side of your levy, which, you know, the state has rules with regards to how much you can increase your levy for your operations. On the debt side, though, there are exemptions for long-term debt repayments. And that's kind of a workaround within the framework of the rules that counties operate within.
So then the language here, when you're using capital, is driven by what you can put on the debt levy?
Yeah, and I think that should match with the capital or capital improvement plan though, too.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So then the last fund is your highway internal service fund, which is the kind of the business of it's the trucks, it's the people that provide the service. So their revenues are tracking very close to normal, 25%. And expenses are, you know, a little bit under, which could be normal because you don't record things like depreciation every month and things of that nature that typically are done at the end of the year.
Yeah, just to add to there are some one-time transportation reimbursements you get for salt sheds and different things earlier in the year, insurance. So they wouldn't necessarily match up with the expenditure activity too. So, but I
Yeah.
guess what I noticed here is you certainly did a lot of plowing for state highways, which probably doesn't surprise anybody. So there's a lot of winter maintenance on state roads, and that money is recouped monthly from the state and booked monthly too. So that one's probably on the full accrual because this is really a business type and what's called an enterprise fund.
Right. And I apologize too. Do all the members of the committee have a copy of this report? Because if not, we can send it out to you too.
No, we just got the report this morning, so we're gonna upload it to the website.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
After the meeting,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we
and
have,
I'll print a copy out for anybody who wants it.
yeah, we apologize for not getting this to you sooner with the agenda or prior to the meeting. This is since this is the first one, you know, we've been kind of working with the county to get some of these numbers. So, but in the future, this will be out earlier.
Any other questions to the board? Pat, thank you. Oh, good. Pat,
Are you going to be here for the agenda item on the lease of squad cars?
Sure, I can certainly, yeah. And Dan did send me that, so I did do some research on it. And so I'd be happy to stick around.
Okay, so on the capital with debt levy, if the county leases vehicles, can that be placed on the debt levy?
Yeah,
Yes,
actually,
sir.
that is the one question Dan had is, would it still qualify for that? I did send an email to Sarah Regenauer with Department of Revenue, and they did reply in the affirmative that the county could still treat that as debt and thus levy for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And maybe just before we leave this report, I mean, I'd just like to know what your reaction is. Is this sort of what you expected, or maybe you didn't know what you're to expect? Is this what you, like I say, we've used this similar format for another county a few years ago, and they're still using it, but we're not calling this a deep dive, but we're calling this I mean, it's maybe a bit longer because of the number of funds than we first thought, but any reaction from anybody or?
I think it's a good start.
Okay,
Yeah, please feedback both ways, you know, if you
Right.
want to see something different or if it's just right or, you know, not at all. Let us know.
yeah,
This is Laura. I think this is pretty good for starting out. I mean, it gives us a good baseline. I always call these dashboards. I mean, so you have something to monitor your progress with, you know, as we get along through the budgeting, there's probably different things we may want to see, but as for a meeting to meeting kind of keeping track of where the people's money is, I think this is great.
Good.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And this is Pat, the thing I'm most interested in is if there's anything that jumps out at you that we weren't anticipating when we passed the budget, anything, you know, like expenses or something that's just, we may have to make some adjustments for. Or if there's some good news somewhere that maybe gives us some leeway to do something else. So that's those things that are really unexpected based on the budget that we passed that I find most interesting.
Yeah, and so the report we're giving you is very summarized, of course. Mike and I are looking at the detailed, you know, of every count. And so we didn't see anything that stood out that was of particular note. Other than, like I said, with the law enforcement billing for the services provided to the Bad River Group, which isn't booked yet, but was billed. So it doesn't show up as a revenue in your financial statements currently. And that is one thing we want to work with the county on to get that set up and use the accounts receivable function. And of course, it's the first quarter of the year too. So hopefully nothing really bad happened in our budget yet, which we didn't see. And certainly if something does, we will definitely point it out.
Yeah, our plan is to, again, like Steve said, this is through March 31st. And a lot of January and even early February business is 22 stuff for the prior year. So, yeah, on the revenue side anyway. And so we'll plan on looking at things a little deeper for June, for a 6-month look. And then we'll go into the departments in the general fund. That's really the big difference for the deep dive will be, how is Clerk Courts doing? How is, different, a little more specific on the departments.
Yep. And just kind of more in the way of just a general update, not specific to financial activity. But I believe we're happy to tell you that your zoning department's now using receipting from Springbrook. And I think Human Services, as of this morning, has their receipting going. The clerk's office will be forthcoming very shortly. So I think we will be pretty close to fully operational with what we had seen for using that module. The accounts receivable module still needs some work, but some departments are in the process of implementing. So we're just kind of an update there with regards to the Springbrook activity side of things that we're working with you on.
Speaking of that Springbrook piece, is there a better way of doing some of the things we're still doing on paper? We're still doing a lot of vouchering and filling out things like that. Is there a better way through Springbrook of doing that?
Well, I think the county has changed many procedures to make them more efficient or try to take advantage of the capabilities of Springbrook. Is there still room to go? Probably, yes. But things take a little time, and I know you've also had some employee turnover in certain departments, which throws a wrench in things at times too. You work with somebody and then all of a sudden it's a new person. So you got to kind of go back and retool and reformat. What we're doing there to try to help out with that is provide written documentation and procedures so that the new person coming in has something to look at and guide them. So to try to make that kind of retooling or retraining quicker. But there still are some things that we could do. Are we as far as long as we'd like to be? Pretty close. Could we be further? Certainly.
You know how impatient I am, but you guys have been doing great. A question about this. Now, this spreadsheet is generated by you guys, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there functionality within Springbrook to generate reports such as this, or are we?
There
there
are,
either?
yeah. So there are some reports out there. And there's a Tableau that's kind of like a report writer that kind of attaches to Springbrook. And I know Sue, I believe Laura is working on a report for you for, I think, the law enforcement committee or something like that. And so her and I were looking at that. We definitely will try to take advantage of that. The hardest part there is the reports that Springbrook has kind of pre-canned and set up for people. In my opinion, I don't really like them that well. And a lot of times they provide way too much detail, or like sometimes the graphs are really funky looking. So we need to, spend a little bit more time with that and get involved with that to try to tweak those so that I would call them a report that I would want to send out. And, so, but yeah, that would be the hope, is to do it that way. But we're not quite there yet.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we use a trial balance or a budget report to do this, and it does not take that long to key them in because we're just looking at each fund total. So
Yeah.
it's fairly quick.
Yeah, that is a good point. The basis for this report is a detailed report, which, has totals by fund, which we kind of plug in, and then We have formulas in here to check it out that it balances to the report and stuff like that, so that, you'll see like on the report here, your revenues for your budget match your expenses for your budget, because local government has to have a balanced budget. So that's a good thing. And then we can check that, the levy and the revenues minus the expenses match what the final number is on the report. So all that is good. So.
Oh, this is Mike here. We got Sue. She wants to chime in here.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, I just wanted to kind of mention about the AP. We have eliminated a lot of papers. We are trying to do away, like Steve had mentioned, with the paper vouchers. So we are using just mainly the invoices most of the time, and then those are scanned right into the into Springbrook. So that has been working extremely well. We've reduced a ton of paper, and it's very, very nice for all the departments to be able to go in and look up an invoice on Springbrook. It's working very smoothly. So that has moved forward really nicely. So I just wanted to let Laura know that we have made quite a few significant changes to that. So.
Yep. Sue, thank you for pointing that out. And that will be a huge tool for any employee that's working with the budget or creating the budget with your auditors, because you can give access to your system and they can go in and do their expense testing and go back and see the actual invoice without having to, go through the extra effort of going to a file cabinet and pulling out a sheet of paper. And like Sue mentioned, there was a cover sheet that was placed on top of each bill, kind of as a voucher jacket, so to speak. And ultimately, when you start doing it this way and attaching things, it becomes very evident that that piece of paper is not necessary. And so those are the things that we're eliminating as we go.
And this is Laura. Sue, I'd like to thank you very much. I know all these questions and things and reports that I've wanted has fallen mostly on you. So kudos to all the different changes that not only you have made and been open to, but the progress that you guys have had.
Well, thank you, Laura. I mean, working with Steve and Mike has been awesome. And they've really helped to guide us in the right direction. So I do appreciate you pushing us and Steve and Mike guiding us. So it's going very, very well. So we're getting there. It's a little slower than what Steve and Mike want, but we are making lots of leaps and bounds. So
Fantastic, good. I just want to say that, our budget is a living, breathing document. And at any given time, the county board can change that for whatever reason that might come up. And I can see that this quarterly report that Mike and Steve is working on can be modified to reflect as such. I'd like to reach out and thank Sue and Mike and Frank here. I think we're finished with this item and we can move on.
Mentioning less paper, to me, it brings up, because of my past employment, we went through something similar about a decade earlier. And part of what happened is there was a whole lot less file cabinets, paper storage. It freed up space for other things. And so one of the things I guess the administrator could look at is how long do we need to retain some of the existing paper? And are we getting to a point where we could do with fewer file cabinets, et cetera, because we do have a lot of people kind of stuffed into tight quarters. And if, some storage stuff could go and records, that would be a good thing, be a nice consequence of this.
Yeah, we've been going, when we had to empty the attic out with all the files, everybody in the building has been going through all the records and disposing of things that they can legally get rid of. And that's being done now on an annual basis because they just need the room themselves. So we are doing that. Well, unfortunately, we can't move file cabinets just yet. It's probably going to take about 7 years before we can get through all that stuff. Because you have to keep a lot of financial records that long. Okay, I'm going to keep this one fairly brief. All the documents are on the website. Mr. Stendor is on the implementation committee. He can please step in at any point. So we're moving full steam ahead with joint dispatch. The plan is that we're applying for the grant May 1st, which is about $750,000 this year. That money is going to be used to purchase new equipment. That's computers, desks, radios, everything, all the technology needed to get to next gen 911. The plan then is to implement in January of 2025. So that would give us 18 months or 20 months rather, from the grant application to actual implementation. So during that time period, so the setting up a structure where the home will be Bayfield County. So in Washburn is where dispatch will actually be located. They have the space there for the needed number of people, which is a minimum of 2 per shift. Although some shifts are going to go up to 4 and 5, depending on the day, the events that are going on in the area, all the different factors that could require more dispatchers. But they're going to be at least 2 every single day at every single shift. And Bayfield County has the ability to have 5 or 6 dispatchers, including what will be a new department head there. And what Bayfield County is going to do is it's going to be a separate department that's going to be funded by both counties. Right now, the plan is to fund it 50-50. Will it move to per call basis down the line? Probably. But the problem with that is we don't have good data right now. We don't know what exactly is a call. Is it, when a officer calls in and just asks something, I don't know, mundane, because I can't think of a good example. Ron, you could probably have one.
I think if I'm out in a patrol car and I call in, I want to check a plate number. Okay, that's a call? Or is that just doing business? Just the routine process of what an officer would do and what dispatch would do.
So we haven't really determined yet what exactly makes up a call. So, so are we 3,000 or 4,000 calls higher? Well, maybe, but it could be some mundane stuff that actually doesn't really mean anything. So until we can actually figure that out, I mean, it's hard to do on a per call basis. And then how do you do it? Is it from the year before, or is it an estimate? So that part hasn't been worked out. So we're looking at going into the deal 50-50 as for costs. Now, it may well end up ending that way because the calls everything is pretty much that way, once we figure out everything. But I just be forewarned, it may change, a couple years into it. And the goal here is to be fair to all parties. So again, so we're applying for the grant for May 1st, and we have all the approvals we need from the boards. So after May, the next step is Bayfield County is going to move up to 2 dispatchers at all times, because one of the 2 PSAPs has to be there when you apply for the grant. So they're by May 1st, they're going to have 2 dispatchers on all time. They're asking us to contribute about $30,000 to that. That would be on the county board agenda next week. It's not on the agenda this week because we just didn't have enough time for this committee, but I wanted to at least let you know about it. Well, if we do that, that's a commitment from us that we're going to move forward. Because we're going to be paying them $30,000 this year, and I think it's close to 100 next year, or 90, something like that. It's in the county board packet, the numbers. And again, that's showing our commitment to doing this. Let's see, where are we? So what the plan is then, so they're going to create this new department. There'll be a new department head over there. Then there will be some lead dispatchers. So 1 every shift, except for when the department head's there. was decided that when the department head's working there, there doesn't need to be a lead dispatcher because that department head is can be expected to go in the dispatching when needed. And then our dispatchers. The plan is to merge all of our existing employees. We don't want to, nobody's going to lose a job. In fact, we're going to need to hire more people. The pay scale will be the higher of the two counties. In this case, it's Bayfield County. And Bayfield County also has a slightly better benefit program with health insurance. So they would all become Bayfield County employees, getting a higher wage and better benefits. And of course, we'd be paying for that. We also agreed that Bayfield County should get an administrative expense because they're going to be doing the payroll. They're going to be doing all the accounting. They're going to be paying for the insurance, all that administrative stuff, overhead. We have to pay for part of that too, half of that cost. So that's going to be included in the expenses. Do we expect this to save us money going forward? Probably not. The next couple of years, it's probably going to actually be more money than we're spending now. But the reason for moving ahead is the state's giving out grants right now for Next Gen 911, which is the next technology for radios and dispatching. And if we don't do it now, we're going to end up paying for it ourselves in the future. It's not going to be, here's a grant to help you do it. It's going to be, you have to do it. And there ain't no grants with it. Also, we believe that because there's going to be more dispatchers on duty, it's going to be better service for all residents of both counties. We'll be able to do emergency medical dispatch. And what that means is, say I'm having a heart attack and Supervisor Brilliant, you call in saying that I'm having a heart attack. What they'll do is they'll tell you how to administer CPR on the phone and stay on the phone with you, or to help you to do whatever, provide whatever assistance you can for an emergency. Stay on the phone with you the entire time until either a fire department or an ambulance or police officer, sheriff's deputy, some emergency responder can get there. But you need at least 2 people on duty to do that because that person can't get off the phone and there's going to be other calls coming in. So the idea is to provide much better service to everyone. So I guess that's kind of where we're at. We're still working on the governance document. There's a draft, and I just received a new one today, so the one you got is old, but at least it gives you a general idea. Governance of how we plan to govern this organization. So the plan is to have the 2 administrators, one county board member appointed by the chairs, and 2 sheriffs as the governing board. Then there would be a non-governing policy board that includes representatives from all the different emergency services in both counties, emergency management people, to where, like, so if the firefighters in, say Butternut are having problems with dispatch or something, this is that policy board where they can go bring these problems to and bring it to the governance board. Changes to approve budgets, would take 4 out of the 6 votes. So each county has to vote for the budget. Any changes to the document would require unanimous vote and then both county boards approving. So changing the financing structure would mean having both county boards have to approve it. Again, there's a draft in the county board packet. It's just a draft. If you have suggested changes, we'd love to hear them. And we'll try to get those changes inputted. And there's a whole gigantic PowerPoint in the county board packet that is probably more information than you want to see. But it details the entire process. And so I guess, I'd like to give you guys a chance to look at that and so we can discuss it further at the county board where everybody can hear about it. And so we're all getting the same message at the same time. But everybody has all the information of where we are as of, well, yesterday, I guess, because I got the new governance document.
The one question I got is this going to entail another subcommittee to the board, or are we going to modify the existing subcommittee to have all these people?
No, it's not going to require another subcommittee, but it is going to require a new appointment by the chair, which would take place, probably after the next election.
So in that document, kind of in the governance part, there's one place where, if there's changes, whatever, it says it will be the county decision. And it seems like it should be plural because there's 2 counties involved. And what I couldn't understand from some language there, we're going to house it in Bayfield County, but it wasn't clear if Bayfield County was making that decision or if it's both counties together, then this group. So maybe county wasn't the right word, or it should have been plural.
I agree. I'm not exactly sure which paragraph you're talking about,
It's towards the end.
but if you could, for the county board, you can talk to me later, but so other county board members understand, we should, if you have specific questions like that, if you can give us the exact paragraph so we can put it on the screen and everybody can see what you're talking about and to answer that. Because it could be a simple HR issue where Bayfield County would be the one making that decision because they're Bayfield County employees. So I need to see the exact paragraph.
So another topic, the buy-in part towards the end, if another county wants to buy in, how was that language determined and the number of years that they have to pay? And specifically, we've got some upfront costs with this,
Right.
but are we basing it on our upfront costs? Or are we basing it on ongoing costs?
No, so let's let's use Sawyer County as an example because they're right next door to all of us. If they wanted to buy in, one, they'd have to pay part of the cost that we incurred to set up everything. 2, any additional costs. So if we need to set up another dispatching desk center, they would need to pay for the desk and the computers and all that stuff to go with it. And they would have to pay to get on our records management system or at least whatever the licensing is. And then they would have to pay a percentage of the annual costs.
So when the buy-in costs, am I assuming correctly that would include costs not covered by the grant? We wouldn't be asking them
Yeah.
to pay a share of that. And then it really isn't clear to me, what if a county says, we're going to go our own way? How do we then end an agreement with someone after that those investments have been made, and
Right.
changes made to have been accommodated county?
Right. Well, the document you have, I believe, says 18 months notice. I've been talking to Mark about that, and I think we should make it 36 months notice. And the reason being is to unwind a dispatch and start a new one is going to take years, and the amount of expense involved for both parties is huge. We also want to make sure there's at least 1 county board election and probably 2 in between to allow 1 cooler heads to prevail, or 2, just to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Could we end it quicker? Sure, both parties agree. Any agreement can be amended. But I think we want a longer period to really make sure this thing works and we have an incentive to make it work, but also to make sure if somebody does pull out that the other county is able to get up and running.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that and also add that you don't want a county continuing to use the threat of pulling out to maybe, throw their weight around a little bit. You want them to know that it's a long process and it's
Yeah.
not going to be taken lightly in terms of the timeline. And, I think an election is good to have in between.
Yeah, at least 1 election, because quite literally, that is one of those issues that can turn an election, public safety. So I think that, I'm pushing for a 36-month and I hoping you all agree on that, because I do think that we need to have the opportunity to take a step back.
You sure?
Microphone.
Start up a whole new dispatch is gonna take not only money, but a lot of time.
Yeah. So, yeah, so to me, the longer the better.
Yeah.
It also shows a commitment on both sides. That's the important part. And I think going into this, you really have to be committed. You know, otherwise, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah.
It's kind of like getting married. If you're not committed, you don't, better not do it.
So what's the action we need on this too?
Well, I don't think we need any action. You know, I'll be honest, we put discussion action on every item. So if there is something that you guys want to take action, you can. But I don't think, this is more of an update, and we'll be doing it again at a PPLE next week. And we'll be doing it again at a county board, just so everybody knows what's going on. And if there's questions, we can answer them for the next meeting. But please, if you have very specific questions about the documents, can you cite what you're talking about? Because it's hard. Otherwise, it's impossible for me to make comment.
With that being said, are we prepared to move on?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, item next is enterprise lease loan. For Mike and you.
Yeah, and Nate Delegan's here to help talk about this. Nate, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'll start this one off. I can just kind of give the committee an overview of what we're kind of looking at here. Just kind of a background of it. When I took this position back in February, one of our areas of concerns were our squad cars here at the Sheriff's Department. Basically, what we're having a large number of them that deteriorating to the points of they had high mileage on them, and we were paying quite steep repair bills. For example, on a couple of our squad cars just recently, we had to put quite a bit of money into them to the tune of $3,000 to $4,000 a piece. And that wasn't including some other things that probably should have been fixed on them too. So that became a big concern, especially with what the deputies use the cars for. You know, I mean, you're running into high speeds, braking hard, stuff like that becomes a safety issue with the squad cars. So what I did is I started digging into it to see what was the best avenue for the county and the Sheriff's Department and a financial aspect of it to replace these squad cars, because we do have such a high number of them that are in the 100,000 mile mark. And as I did my research, one of the big things I seen a lot of the agencies throughout the state of Wisconsin were going to was the enterprise lease program. And with that, basically, in a nutshell, is these agencies were getting better value for their squad cars on return, unlike ours. We weren't getting that much money on return on our squad cars because we were basically running them into the ground and not getting no financial equity out of them when we sold them to go towards the next purchase of our squad cars. So basically what Enterprise does is put you on a 4-year term, which you can see that's on the screen there. And at that time, you've got your use out of them, but yet they're not to the safety aspect of causing problems for the department. And they're getting some pretty good resale on a lot of them vehicles because of the market that they have out there to sell these vehicles. And then what happens with that money, it goes back into our squad cars. So our next ones are cheaper. And the whole point of it is eventually our lease payments go down. We pay less for our annual payments here. One of the other things is that where I seen was a big problem is that the inflation of the squad cars and the equipment that we put in them. So for the squad cars that we're purchasing now for this year, they were at 50,000 a piece. There was 2 of them ordered prior to me getting in here, but then the other aspect of that, it cost almost close to 20,000. It's right around $17,000 to equip the squad car, and that's per squad car. So you're looking at about $67,000 per squad now to put a car on the road. And that's quite a bit of jump from our last ones. And with that being said, I mean, at 2 squad cars, you're looking at $134,000 for just 1 year. I looked at our budget when I first got in here in February, and it looked like last year when they did the budget, they only budgeted for I think $55,000 for a squad car, which we were getting 2. So there was only $55,000 in there that it looked like that we could purchase a squad car. So we'd had to get the other 55,000 plus the installs from somewhere else. So what I was able to do is getting with Enterprise on several occasions, we were able to look at what we had for a fleet, looked at what we should pull out of our fleet for our best values of sale right now. And that would be economically the best cost for the county, and then clearing up the safety issues with the squad cars. And what I was able to do is, because just to back it up a little bit too, we got 2 squad cars in the back now that are actually, they're not even serviceable anymore. We can't use them. And we had them in administration vehicles, but they're to the point now that we don't want to repair them because we're gonna have to end up sticking a lot of money onto it. So like even the admin vehicles we use now are actually patrol vehicles that need to go back into patrol at some point when we get vacancies filled here. So that was another issue. So with that being said, to clean up the squad cars that we needed to clean up that had high mileages that we could get rid of for safety aspects, and our best value was 7 squad cars out of our fleet, because with the 15 squads that are mainly for patrol now, 8 of them that we have are over 100,000 miles on them, and they're starting to cost us, and they're being unsafe for the deputies to drive them. So with that being said, the deal I was able to work out with Enterprise is the first year we come into this, we'd be replacing 7 of our vehicles. 4 of them would be pursuit rated vehicles in the patrol. 2 of them would be them admin vehicles that are unrepairable now that we can get back into our fleet. With that being said, you'll see on the this thing that Dan has up, our annual payments for that, and this I would include on this too, so you guys understand that what I ended up doing is I put our equipment costs into our lease payments. So the $17,000 per squad, that money is actually in these lease payments. So we'd pay an annual fee starting next year of $87,000 for these 7 squads. And that would run for a term of 4 years. 4 years on our patrol squads, and then 3 years on the jail van. So what I did too is I lumped the jail van into this too, so which they had extra money in their budget for their vehicle. But this is lumped into that. So it'd be 87,000 for the annual payment, lease payment for these vehicles for the coming year. For this year, it's prorated at 43,000 with a down payment of 11,000 and a little change. Which would keep us at about 55,000, which we had budgeted for this year. So that we'd able to use that 55,000 we had budgeted for this year in lease payments, and then next year starting, we'd pay the 87,000. I'll get to the point too of there's actually 2 sheets here, Dan. If you can pull the other one up, I can explain the committee on that too. So this 87,000 is just for the Ashland County Sheriff's Department. Then we got another sheet here. I don't know, you got access to it, Dan?
No, we don't, but Bad River pays for that one, so.
Okay, yeah, so, but just so the committee understands that there is another one of 38,000 of annual payment, but that belongs to the Bad River is responsible for that. And them vehicles aren't a dire need, them actually need to be replaced. They're well over their lifespan, and they're actually seeing a big repair bills with them too. So the vehicles that we had on order for this coming year, Enterprise will take them over once they come inbound, which we haven't had yet. So once they get here, they'll take them payments over on them vehicles for us.
So the Bad River one is on the screen.
Okay, so yeah, if you take a look at the Bad River, this belongs to Bad River here. These are their 4 squad cars they pay for. We'd be replacing 3 of them coming up, and them are the 3 ones that, and them squads are actually pushing almost 150,000 miles, which is way too much. And they're seeing some big repair bills on them too. So their annual payment starting next year would be 36,000 for their squad cars, and then a prorated amount of this year of 18,000 that they would pay along with the 6,000 down payment. Does anybody have any questions this far about this?
This is Pat. I looked online some at Enterprise, and it's the Enterprise Car Rental Company. And there's news stories on there about cities and counties switching to this, and they're, you know, what I would describe as promo pieces touting the benefits of this. And so one of the things that I don't see in our packet is I don't, you know, you mentioned higher cost. Vehicles get old, yes, they cost more. They get to a certain point and, you know, you don't get much for them. They're hard to sell and all that sort of stuff. But I don't see the numbers pulled together to show what we're actually putting into these vehicles in terms of all of these maintenance costs. I don't see anything to indicate if we're going to get better mileage, which is one of the things Enterprise touts with these flex fuel vehicles. I don't see that. They also claim that, you know, they get better mileage, which that didn't make any sense to me. And it wasn't clear to me at the end of this lease if we had the option to buy the vehicle for that amount, or if we could be given a credit for that amount, regardless of the condition, or if that's just an estimated value and maybe we'll get that or maybe we won't. So that part really wasn't clear from things I was reading. I'm not opposed to considering this, but I just don't see enough numbers, you know, and this, what I was interested in, our consultants hanging around a little bit is, do we have the ability to pull all these numbers together so we can look at the repair bills we're putting into that, and maybe staff time too, to take them to the garage? I would assume from what I've been read online that Enterprise can negotiate better upfront costs of the vehicles than we can, which gives them some capacity to, you know, to offer this service. And I would assume from what I'm reading that somehow they're negotiating better rates of getting vehicles repaired. So if we're taking these to a shop, you know, a dealer in town, is Enterprise negotiating lower rates for labor and parts for repairing these vehicles? So it left me with a lot of questions as we look at this.
I can answer one of your things you asked about the resale of the vehicles. That's one thing with Enterprise, that we get 100% of resale on them. That comes back to us at the county. As far as the repair costs for us, I would have to go back and, are you historically, you're looking for that, what we paid in maintenance fees for the squads we have now?
Well, I don't know if we have the ability with our accounting systems at this point to pull in the numbers that show what are we paying for repairs on the vehicles. And a similar thing could be said about the highway department. You know, we hear about old vehicles that get worn out, and yes, we all know how that works. And this is a rough climate, you know, for those vehicles to exist for lots of reasons, road conditions, salt weather. You know, those are all hard, but the numbers from the budget and the repair could help us quantify that. And I'm wondering if we have the ability to pull in all of that information. Okay.
That's definitely something I can do. I can try to look back on the records that we have to just to add to that. I guess I look back as far as like even December of this year. That month was really high for us. I think we paid almost close to $10,000 in repairs on squad cars, because there were some big items there that we were replacing. So yeah, I can look back and see what I can find historically for the repairs here.
Because
I think one thing too that I'd like to add to that too is, that's the whole point of the lease program too, is that if we're getting rid of these squad cars before we're putting these big purchases into them, because where we're seeing the big maintenance costs is these squads that are over 100,000 miles. With Enterprise, you never go over 100,000 with these squad cars, and they're turned in. So that's kind of why we looked at Enterprise too, is because that's where we are seeing our costs, is those squads that are over 100,000.
And then the equipment, you know, at 17,000. So from reading some articles on that, it's hard to repurpose that, and especially as the vehicle gets older, it's less likely that equipment can be repurposed. So if Enterprise, so I'm thinking, well, how can they make money and this still be good for us? So one is they probably can negotiate lower upfront costs on the purchase of the vehicle, given the volume that they do. That's one thing. I'd be really curious, Nate, if you can find out if they negotiate lower costs for repairs with our dealerships here, because if they can, there's another place that they can save money. Arguably, they can repurpose more of that equipment if we're not keeping them as long, for other places, which would help. And then if we are getting, better mileage, with some of these newer vehicles, that helps. But then there's also staff time, obviously, with, things aren't running and how do we juggle things, getting it down to the repair shop, et cetera. Some of those things, can help too. So if I were to knock on doors, a year from now, and someone says, hey, why is the county leasing vehicles instead of renting them or buying them and then driving them as long as you can? I want to be able to give them an answer, with numbers that justifies that decision, as opposed to just using words that, we all say like, well, they're not driving old vehicles, so that's good. So we are the finance committee, so we should, hopefully can look at numbers.
This was an
I can-
issue that Clark had already brought up when he was here, and the city is already doing this. And I understand the pricing and everything, which I know when I talked to Bill, he said it does save them money. It gave him a little room. Plus, my big concern is making sure that we're not having vehicles with 150,000 miles and trying to transport with somebody with it, or that our employees, our sheriff's officers are riding around in. This keeps us in a nice tight loop of replacing these without a huge amount of cost, and it's safer for everybody all around. But the city's been doing this for a while.
Yeah, I want to see numbers that back why we're looking at this. I'm supportive of looking at this. I would like to see numbers to back it so that we have those numbers to give us a better sense of this. I also want to not do this simply because others are doing this. I want to see numbers that back it. And I believe that there's a good chance that the numbers are going to back that this is a good decision.
Like I said, Clark had already looked into this and had shown us a couple years ago that this was already, he had numbers at that time. I don't know if you've got it on your computer or not, which it would be old data anyways, but it's a no-brainer for me. So
I'd like to touch on a few things too. I would agree with Laura. It is, from what I've seen too, it's definitely a cost saving to the county. And Pat, I can address your concerns about the repair costs like through enterprise. So when you talk about can enterprise get a better deal? Yes, they can get a better deal on the purchase of vehicles because they purchase quantities, right? So they get a better deal on that. So we're saving money there. The aspect of maintenance, we can get on a program with enterprise if that's what we decide to do. And basically what they do, it's called their preferred shops. So they negotiate rates with shops around the area, and that's where we bring our stuff. So they negotiate a better rate of, say, getting a rear end and a vehicle replaced, where the shop down the road might charge you $5,000. This shop has made a deal with enterprise that they'll do rear ends for $3,500. So there is that option, but we have to buy into that maintenance option with them too, or we have the option of taking on the maintenance ourselves.
That's helpful to know that we have to pay for that option. Because some of the articles online will talk about, oh, they take care of repairs, or, they'll do it for lower cost. But one reason I think it's worth a deep dive into this topic now is I think there's a very realistic chances that the county board will consider, leasing vehicles for every department that we have. And so this is sticking the toe in the water. So let's take a fairly careful look now. And then once we do, then we'll have a better idea if we want to expand this further in the county.
Yeah, the lease agreement, I guess I don't understand exactly what that covers. A few years ago, I leased a new Honda. And all I was responsible for during that lease period, which was 3 years, was normal maintenance, tires, oil changes, and stuff like that. But anything went wrong with that car, they paid for it. Now, is this going to happen with us or not?
I think only if you buy into the maintenance program.
So that stuff that you're talking about, Dick, yeah, that stuff would be covered because would be a normal warranty of vehicles. You're talking like transmissions, engines, all that stuff, drivetrain, that would be covered by them. That's, yes, basically what our maintenance piece would be is replacing tires and stuff like that, if that's what we chose to do.
Well, what are we looking at here? Obviously, Pat is looking for more information, but we're not prepared to make a, go ahead.
Well, I guess my question is, this was put before us, but there wasn't anything in the agenda packet that gave us any clear indication of when you would want action on this. In fact, it seemed like more informational to us. I don't know when they need these vehicles. It sounds like sooner than later. And so it didn't give us that timeline, if you will.
Excuse me. This. Where is it? They want to move as soon as possible. The numbers here reflect June 23rd delivery. That's on here.
I guess I would make a motion to approve, but then with the request that to the extent possible with the county budget information and our consultants, that we include a summary of the costs that we have for doing maintenance on old vehicles and the things that Nate articulated, to the extent that we can put numbers there that help us compare the current approach, which is to, run them into the ground and repair them, versus going to this, and then a recommendation if we should include the option to buy in on the maintenance agreement.
Okay, we'll get that into the packet either tomorrow or Monday. And then we'll hand it out to everybody at the board for Tuesday.
Laura?
I'll second that.
Oh, you got a second? Okay, I saw your light on. Okay, we got a motion on the board, on the floor here in a second. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And what kind of direction we want to give Mike and Steve here? They're on a hook to do comparison?
Well, as much information as they can reasonably pull up within a reasonable amount of time that summarizes the costs of the current approach, which is, keeping them and doing the maintenance, et cetera. And that could include, staff time spent, running cars to the garage and picking them up and all that stuff. If there's, all these reasons that were articulated, to the extent we could put numbers to that.
So then Mike and Steve can collaborate with Nate. over
Yeah,
at,
Mike,
over
Steve,
there.
Nate, and the administrator to pull that up. My sense is the numbers make sense from what I was reading online, why Enterprise can do this. They can make money, but they have the capacity to, negotiate things better than we do.
Mhm.
But I want to be able to tell my constituents, an answer to this that has numbers to it.
Right, good.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I guess direction has been given. So let's move on to the grant writing position.
Okay, well, Supervisor Berlin, this is your baby.
Well, this is kind of my take here. In order to bring Ashland County to the next level, I feel it's important that we have a grant writer here in the county. And it's been brought to my attention on the executive committee by Clarence Campbell, indicating that we have a grant writer on board, which is over at Health and Human Services. And that grant writer over at Human Service, not to talk down on this, but there are certain grants that keep coming in every year to Health and Human Services. That's a replay, so to speak. Okay, this is what we had last year. This it's just a reapplication. And I feel it's necessary at this point in time. And my background comes from working with the tribe, working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and there's a lot of money out there. As a matter of fact, especially more. No, thank you. money out there right now, which is COVID's CARE Act, the ARPA funds and stuff like that. And this is going to continue to go to probably 26, 27, maybe 28. Because even though all this money needs to be spent by a timeline, there's still going to be money out there for us to go after. And I'm taking a look at the county and also the city, but I'm not on the city council here or anything like that. But I feel it's necessary for us to bring a grant writer on board, no matter what this person, what kind of wage we put on it. The first application this person is going to get funded for the county is going to far exceed the wage we pay this person. Matter of fact, just this morning, as a matter of fact, last night, I was sitting on the bed there thinking, and the wife says, okay, you're up to something. And I said, yeah, I'm kind of thinking about this grant writer thing over here at the county. I said, I'm kind of thinking that we need a consultant to kind of oversee it, so to speak. And a consultant is, and then an individual came to mind. She had worked with in DC, and she worked with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and she monitored, and she was the last stop for some of these applications that came in. She had a checklist of things, and and that was her job. And if we can probably, and she's retired now, or this person is retired, and if we can have a consultant to kind of accommodate that, so that whenever we put an application in, we know all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and the probability of us getting funded for whatever grants we might apply for is going to be more, what do you call it, positive than negative. And there's always going to be some that's not going to be funded, but we are in a unique position at the present time to step up and go forward. I'm looking at Ashland County that we have so many things going for us over here, and we're kind of in a stall mode, kind of like we have a pet project, which is our science center over here. Money has been appropriated for that, but the money never got to go where it was appropriated for. And if it was funded for once, we can retrieve that in other avenues or other resources. And in talking with Dick here as well, I said, just out of curiosity, I can ask each one of us, if we were to come into $50 million, where would we want to put it? A new administrative building? There's so many places that we could put it, but we need to also think that when we apply for money, there's always a parameter of what you're going to use this money for, and whether it be economic development, whether it be infrastructure or whatever. And that's going to play a part in this as well. And this kind of coincides with what I had suggested. I've been asking for $500,000 for a contingency fund, only because when you apply for grants, there's always a matching cash match. Some are bigger, some are less than. Well, you take a look at $500,000 at say a 5% cash match. Boy, that $500,000 is not going to go very far. But this is out of the gate, something I don't believe Ashland County has ever done before. We need to, explore new territories. There's money out there, and I don't see Ashland County going above or beyond what we've done all these years. We need to get out of the box and thread some new territory. I guess that's my spiel. I'm not concerned about what wage that we're going to pay this person, because you get what you pay for. Yes.
So this topic has come up before and in other places that I've worked in. And there's two basic questions that are often asked. And so I'll ask those to start with. One of which is, we have department heads that write grants now. And it varies by department, what grant opportunities they have. And then recurring grants are one thing, you fill out the same paperwork essentially each time and provide documentation. You use the money appropriately from the previous cycle. That's one thing. But if I think what you're focusing on are grants that are maybe one-time opportunities or ones that we're not currently getting. And so then the question comes up, one question that comes up is, because department heads know their field better than, arguably anyone else, would it be more important to provide more administrative support for department heads to support those grants? Because you have to document the activity related to the grant. So there's, wages that need to be paid, there's supervision, there's, all sorts of documentation. It may be equipment that you need, to get, et cetera, to carry out the grant. So would more administrative support for department heads be helpful? And then the other question that comes up is, well, if department heads are currently getting grants and managing those grants, would that workload be transferred to the grant writer? And how would that work? And would the grant writer then need support staff also? So those end up being kind of bigger questions that I believe would have to be addressed in this also. But I am
Well-
supportive of trying to find a way of
Well,
bringing. in
I
more
would look
grant
at that
money.
as being part of the, what do you call it, the job description of the individual, or for us to develop, when we do develop a job description, that can all be collaborated and coordinated as part of that job description, because obviously this new grant writer is going to have to collaborate with those different branches, so Health and Human Services, AADC, or whoever out there, the Veterans Affairs down here, because this grant writer is going to be looking for anything and everything that's going to be available out there. And this grant writer is going to try to pigeonhole that for the administration, the whoever, whatever program that we've got. And of course, there's going to be new, what do you call it? I hope there's going to be some new infrastructure coming down the road here at some point in time. In order for Ashland County to grow, we need to do something with our infrastructure. And well, gee, as I take a look at this, we're primarily finance. Very little do we do with economic development. And it's brought up by attention by George Busse over here that we have a business right here on the edge of town, back by Thomason's. It's a fertilizer, composting type kind of thing. How can we help those folks? That's not even come to this board yet. And I said, yeah, they've come out to visit me at the shop and stuff like that. And I said, that's a good thing. I says, how can we help you? It shouldn't be me asking how we can help them. I should be approaching them as to, we can help you in this area or this area because we're Ashland County and you're a new business, blah, blah, blah. So I feel that I should be reversing this. And in addition to that, what I'm just saying here, we have not talked about economic development on this committee ever. Not in the last 2 or 3 years that I've been here. And this is a resource or an avenue that we need to dedicate time to. How do we dedicate time to that if we don't have finances to do that with? Or AADC, Ashland Area Development Corporation over here, they're overbooked right now. They don't have time to do anything that we might throw at them. Go ahead.
Well, we do give the ADC some money, but we don't give them much, if any, direction. I have believed for a very long time that the city and the county should hire their own staff for economic development, so they have direct input and control and funding of them. And so you brought up grant writing, that's certainly a part of economic development, but then if there's specific businesses within the county we want to work with, we'd have more direct connection to trying to do that. So, part of this conversation then becomes, do we want to continue doing what we're doing, which is, give the ADC money and then little to no direction and little to no accountability, I think, for all practical purposes. It's hard to tell what we get for our money that they wouldn't otherwise be doing. And if they want to be a 501c, that's their choosing. And, I'm supportive of them being here, but that doesn't mean that we have to follow, their lead on whatever they're doing if we want to go in a different direction. And I think the grant writing in particular could help with the county budget because more of that grant money would come in specific to funding county operations and improvements, whereas money to the ADC goes to things that are less specific to helping the county do the things the county has to do to operate.
Laura, you want to chime in?
Writing grants is great, but none of the grants always cover the people that are in it. We already know, like in Health and Human Services, even their reimbursement rates for the things that they do are like maybe 66% on some things. So we're constantly running behind. Every time you take on one of those grants, you take on a whole bunch of duties. That data entry is a pain in the butt. I fight with this stuff to get our data in all the time, and that's just to do the normal things. Tons of grants out there. But if you can't find the people for it and you can't pay them, that's great. We've talked about the economic development thing. We've talked about our county plan, that we need to jump on that and start getting some input on it. I know we're close to the review time to start anyways. I think that's a huge part of this. But if we start hiring people before we have a goal, that's cart and horse backwards again. So maybe we need to lay out a plan with all of this and then start ticking off the boxes for the plan. I mean, I'm sure Nate knows all his grants and the things that go with them. You know, Brian was doing them before. Health and Human Services, there's certain things you have to put in there. You don't get those grants. You know, it's great to have a general person, I guess, but we're going to have targets to hit instead of just, let's have this general person. So I see this as something that needs a little more development before we go, hey, let's hire somebody and get some money. So that's where I sit on this. And we do have Northwest Regional Planning.
Yeah, well, I dare ask, just to throw that out there, Dick's been on the planning, Northwest Regional Planning for some time now. And what have they done for Ashland County? Can you recall anything? Well, anyway, I do know that big building they got over in Iron River where they got that winery right now. That was built by Northwest Regional Planning. They do build buildings and they do things. And well, I'm on a research path here and stuff with Northwest Regional Planning. As a matter of fact, I'm considering running for one of the positions. Matter of fact, a better tribal position, but that's not to take away from this right here, right now. You're right. You know, we need to have a plan. What's our 5-year plan? What's Ashland County's 10-year plan? I can't tell you. The development of the lake down here, the development of the science center. The science center's been on paper here for a while. We need to move. The county's got to get behind some of this stuff, much like what I indicated before. We need to get into economic development here. If we're gonna, we need to start doing something different. We can't just keep doing the same old. And that's what our people here, they know the money that they're applying for every year, and it's recurring, much like Pat had indicated. We need to get out of the box, and we gotta, I'm sorry, I talk too much. Maybe I'm trying too hard.
No, you're right, because we've done nothing as far as any economic development. We talk about it every now and then, but like Laura said, we've got to have a plan also. So I guess that's where we're going to have to start.
And the thing is, like, we've got this composting deal coming in, and no doubt in my mind, they're struggling. Because they're counting their nickels and dimes and try to make this, try to make that. And it isn't until a point in time in your business that it cans over and you're profitable, you're positive, but first, right out of the gate, you're such a struggle. And how can we help this? How can we help bring business into Ashland County? I ain't gonna say I'm not upset because we don't have flea farming here. I understand they did look at some of our properties here, but it's not conducive to their operations. But I understand also that, the ink isn't dry on paper yet. Is there any way that Ashland County can sweeten the deal? You know, has Ashland County been involved in that? Well, we haven't. We haven't been approached. You know, when you got a business coming into Ashland County, they're on their own. What's wrong with this picture? We should be involved. Go ahead.
You asked about Northwest Regional Planning and referred to the building at Iron River. Under normal circumstances, they don't go out and solicit projects. People come to them. With people that can't get funding in other places or whatever. From time to time, they have built or I think of the name of the town. Anyway, they put up buildings, commercial buildings, and then try to find a tenant. Well, sometimes you sit on that a long time, but by and large, it eventually pays off. I don't see that they've done anything over here to that extent. Where I'm talking about is in places that are developing industry-wise, and it's crazy for businesses to come in and stuff like that. We obviously don't have that here. As far as them coming to Ashland County, if we specifically have something in mind, then the process is to go to them. And they'd be glad to help with anything, any kind of project we'd have or financial assistance that they can get for us or anything like that. But as far as them to come knocking on doors, they don't operate like that.
I understand that, yeah, it's, you need to go out and reach, but, let me give another couple examples, like say, for instance, the Ashland Met, just south here on Highway 13. How long did it take them to get where they're at right now? It wasn't until just probably maybe the last 5 years or so. They got some new people in there and stuff like that. Now they chip up all their the tailings and all that kind of stuff. And all they do is make mats. So they bring in these hardwood logs, they saw it, and then they chip it, and this goes there, this goes there. Those they're very, very, very well run operation. That same site location, I want to say it's a kind of a mini industrial park, because it used to just be a lot. Now it's more than just a lot. You take a look across the road or across the way there. You got the old metal building that was, what the heck was that? Wasn't. Okay, H windows, and now there's something else in there, and just recently I see on that side of the building right next to the highway there's something else going on in there. I have no doubt in my mind, these guys are struggling all by themselves, and if they need help, they don't know who to go to or where they can go to and who can help them. And well, once again, I think our aspect as the Economic Development Committee here is we're a little short. We're more focused on our budget and our finance here on Ashland County, and we're kind of selling our constituents short here on the economic development end of it. And we're kind of thinking, even though we're throwing a little bit of money over here at Carver and stuff like that, no, go ahead.
To the north of Ashland, Matt, in that building now is a Crossroads Group. It's a nonprofit that works with people. What they try to do is they say rebuild lives by teaching them skills, primarily working with wood, taking down old buildings, repurposing that, making furniture and other sorts of things for that. So they're hoping to put a new roof on in the near future and grow that program. And then in the process, trying to train people to get into the workforce. I think what Dick was referring to is in Grantsburg, Wisconsin. I believe Northwest Regional Planning built an enterprise center there because they had a tenant that wanted the space. And the difference between an enterprise center and an incubator is the enterprise center, your goal is to fill it with businesses, in your community, but your goal isn't necessarily to develop them and move them out of that building. What we have in the old Larson Jewel building where the ADC is, initially, when Larson Jewel moved to the industrial park here, the city and the county perhaps too, there's a lot of grant money in this, state and federal, that was initially going to be an incubator to start businesses, grow them, and then move them out, like to the downtown. But then after a number of years, they changed to an enterprise center. So their goal in that building is to attract tenants and essentially keep them. So we have an enterprise center in the building the ADC is in. And because we have that enterprise center and because they typically have some space available, right now, I don't think Northwest Regional Planning would have an interest in an enterprise center here unless we had a tenant that had a demand for that space. And so far, we don't have that. And on the grant writing, I think there's two things we should distinguish, going back to planning, as Laura was mentioning. I think one bucket is grants that would serve the county purpose to help us do what we do better. So let's say we could pull in more money, grant money for roads. That would be great. If we could pull in grant money for health and human services that we're otherwise not capturing, that would be great, or the sheriff's department. So if there's grants that we're not getting that we could get, and if we could see a path forward on that, which might mean a little bit of research time before going full in, that's one thing. It's another thing then to get grants for economic development for things other than the county purposes. And since we're already giving the ADC money, maybe the logical starting point is to see if we could do better at direction and thus accountability on our part for what that money gets us. So if there's a composting business that you would like to see supported, well, maybe we can get the ADC to look at that and do, we start with funding what we're already doing and try to direct it to some things that we have specific interests in. Because right now, if you ask me what we're getting for our money, I can't, tell you specifically what difference our money makes versus if they didn't get it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in reference to the buildings that Northwest Regional has put up, you're exactly right. They have no intention of like Ashenary Development having a incubator type system where people come in there, start up their business and never leave. That's not the point. All the businesses that they've helped me build the buildings for are really doing well, really thriving. And I guess what we have to start out with here, Mike, is we have to somehow or other try to convince developers or whatever, somebody to come in here that this is a good place to start up a business and we've got the workforce to back it up. And I don't know that we do that. There's all kinds of businesses in town, you can't find help. And I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't know what the reason is for that, but I mean, most of the giveaway programs are over and people are still not working. It's just, it's a mystery. Anyway, the Northwest Regional has put up several buildings down, and I think they put one up in Phillips, and several of them over around Grantsburg area. I toured them buildings down there. They're really nice, and their businesses. What happens is somebody will start up a small business, and all of a sudden they got more than they can handle, so they want to go into a bigger facility, and normally that's how this happens. And the operating business will keep operating until a new facility is done, and then buy it from Northwest Regional. And you've got, established companies, say, as an example, like breading manufacturing. I don't know how we can convince people that they should relocate their business here or start up a new business here or whatever that's going to employ a bunch of people and pay good wages. There's a lot of hurdles to get over, but I think we should try. You're right. We're not really doing anything.
Well, we got some positive things going for us. Let me finish this thought. We got the big lake out here that's not being capitalized on. We got a nice medical center up here that's being updated, upgraded every day. We got a good system up here, a school system up here. And we even got the vocational technical school right here. So, and our crime rate is not like in the cities. So, you know, we have positive things going for us and we are not capitalizing on any of it. And I think we could and should. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'm perusing the Northwest Regional Planning site right now. If you go in under grant writing, they have as your liaison to state and federal agencies, Northwest Regional Planning Commission has direct ongoing contact with a variety of funding sources to help you assess your project needs and help organize goals and objectives, target the most appropriate sources of funding, prepare and submit grant application proposals. Now, underneath that, they're planning projects, Barnes Drummond, Community Wildfire Protection, Bayfield County Farmland Preservation, Rural St. Croix Community Wildfire Protection. Burnett County has an emergency management one, and Burnett County has a facade improvement plan, City of Phillips comprehensive plan, City of Superior outdoor recreational plan, Clam Lake Area Community Wildfire Protection Plan, Douglas County Hazard Mitigation Plan. There's lots of places on here that have lots of things going on, but they went to them with, we need help with this. Now, when we ask what they've done for us, they helped us with the broadband study. They helped us with the housing study. Those are the things we've asked them for. We just haven't asked them for anything because we don't have a plan, but they have helped people update their comprehensive plans. It may be a good thing because Bayfield County Comprehensive Plan Update is on their project. So why aren't we asking them to help us too?
Good point.
I think it's a good starting
Yeah.
point. And then the housing, they help with housing, affordable housing, community housing, rehab programs, lead-based things. We just haven't asked them.
So then there we go again. We need that 5-10 year plan. What are you looking at?
Well, you know, it's a really good point you make, Lauren, and I think it's the crux of the challenge. Sometime roughly 20 years ago or so, the state of Wisconsin wanted all of the grants that the state awarded to run through the planning agencies. And up here in Ashland, there was a big pushback and saying, no, 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 we want grants to run through the ADC. And so politically at the local level, people said, we want this to go through the ADC. So Northwest Regional Planning and thus the state backed off and said, okay, fine, you can keep running them through the ADC. So it was a conscious choice locally, the city in particular, to say, let's just keep working with the ADC versus Northwest Regional Planning. When I was on the city council, I actually had the director for Northwest Regional Planning come into a council meeting. This is probably 2012 or 13. And he got a really cold shoulder from the majority on council who wanted to back working with the ADC. And he told me, he says, I just don't want to come or I'm not invited and feel welcome. So, you know, maybe the simple thing to start with this, you know, you read that from Northwest Regional Planning site. I've read their site for years and I look at that and I keep asking the same question, why not us? And the answer is we don't ask. Why don't we ask? It's because we give a donation to the ADC every year. Maybe the simple thing to start with is we, instead of giving that money to the ADC this year, and they've got more money than they know what to do with positions they're trying to fill because they got some grant money, you know, which is good for them. But maybe as we take that money this year and we say, what would that get us from Northwest Regional Planning? What would we have them work on for us? And that way we don't have to hire a staff person, but we use that money to fund having them help us using their expertise with some of what they already have staff for.
I think I've accomplished what I set out for. I got the committee involved, engaged, and now I think we have a direction we want to go. I'm not looking for approval for this today. It was just a discussion item that I wanted to bring up to kind of shake us up. I believe there's some things that we're not doing, and I voiced that already. So I think our time limit, I'd like to take and put time limits on some of these things because we're running over,
I
but
just-
still,
I
this is
just have one more
important.
thing, because I think if we don't jump on something like this, and the thing is I don't think it's a Northwest Regional Planning versus an AADC thing. I think having those couple of things along with, we've got the chamber that does certain things and raises all the, they get things and refer them out too. If we don't get our comprehensive plan done, we don't know where we're going. And Northwest Regional Planning looks like the place because there's at least, I don't know, I'm gonna guess and just say 10, because I'm not going to count them. We're not asking. So why don't we have Crystal come in? I've helped Crystal with projects before because she has helped us with stuff. So that would seem to be the thing. Have her come in, talk to us about that, what it would take, and let's get moving on it.
Okay.
Because we've talked about this more than once already.
So with that
Let's
being
move.
said, can I ask that we bring this back at, put it back on the agenda and maybe bring some people in? Yeah? Sounds good. Okay, with that, we're obviously running late here, but that's not uncommon. Let's do a recap of our meeting that we had down at Bad River here 2 weeks ago.
Okay, this should be fairly quick. Most of us were in the room, so. So I'll say that I think it was a very positive meeting. I'm very glad that Supervisor Berlin, you were able to make this happen. Sorry, guys, hit the button here. We have some agreements on clean water, Science Center. So that's all good news. There's working together more on other alternative energies, which I think is very positive. The tribe stated they were willing to consider helping us financially when we do work for members of the tribe, which I think is very positive. I think we're on the same page of taxes where we believe everyone should be treated fairly. So that's a good thing. I know their own tax came up, but that really doesn't concern us, and they can, if they can do whatever they can do under state and federal law, and it's not, that's theirs. So I think it was a very good meeting. I don't know, Mr. Kinney or Mr. Stenner or Mr. Berlin. Do you have any comments?
I was really happy we had the meeting, and I hope we continue to have meetings on a regular basis. Several years ago, when this committee was first formed, we made a long list of things, to work on. So there will always be lots of things to work on. And I think it's very positive to meet, have these discussions and find things that we can work on, improve things for everybody. So I was really, really happy that we had it.
I thought it was excellent. A lot of the issues brought up went right through, and looking forward to a lot of things we can accomplish.
We have another meeting set up for June
16.
something like that. I think I wrote it down. I have it in my calendar. But we have it's in the middle of June. We
Is
have
it
it.
on the county calendar?
I don't know.
Can we put that on there?
Yes, we can.
Thank you.
On the close of that meeting, I had to sort of kind of recap a little bit, and that I did ask, typically when we have these subcommittee meetings, we always put a next meeting date. And then who is that? Ron spoke up with regards to the, he's on the Alliance, Snowmobile Alliance. And then right in the middle of the discussion, Chairman Wiggins he spoke up. Well, the next meeting date could be. So I'm glad that we have another meeting, because what's disheartening to me is that when you have meetings, you're very productive or reasonably productive and stuff like that, and then you don't have another meeting, you don't follow up. And that's very important, especially with the communication between, say, the county and the city. Matt was there representing, and also the tribe. And the next meeting is going to be again out there, so they'll what do you call it, accommodate us and probably have some more water and juice and whatever else they had, coffee. But yeah, we got off to a slow start, but it was I thought it was productive. It was rare that I sit in a room and just sit there and say nothing, and all of a sudden at the meeting, I need to chime in, I say it, and then I kind of give it a small recap and stuff like that, but that didn't just happen. It took some doing for me to get together. Chairman Wiggins is also chairman of this subcommittee of the county board and the tribal what do you call it, council. So it was surprising to me that we just didn't have a couple of council people. We had a quorum council there if you wanted. As a matter of fact, the secretary of the tribal council, he took the minutes. So, but Bob Poole there, so that was good. As a matter of fact, we need to get these, get those minutes from him so that at the next meeting, we have something to hand out and we can go forward from where we started 2 weeks ago. There's anything disheartening is reinventing the wheel all the time. And we seem to be doing a lot of that, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just agree with everything you said. I thought it was very good and productive, and I'm glad we had it.
I apologize for not making it. I had some stuff go sideways at the agency, so, and I was looking forward to just that kind of stuff as having this kind of collaboration, so.
Okay, well, that's in the packet. It's just, we're doing well. Of course, it's only the beginning of the year, so you never know. Everybody's still paying their deductibles. Yeah. That's in the packet, standard information.
With,
If we have Mike and Steve on here yet, as far as whether we lease vehicles or buy them, one of the
They're
questions,
not here.
one of the questions I would have is, we're getting some interest on these investments now, with interest rates having moved up, in the last few months. But, if we're leasing versus buying, that should factor in too, because we don't have, the money that we're, investing in these vehicles when we purchase them, which then saves us, some interest somewhere on the line if we finance them, or it allows us to leave money that's invested that will earn a return too. So that's, should be factored in.
mine was about the health plan report,
Oh, yeah,
quarterly. Aren't we
it's in
supposed
your
to?
packet.
No,
I mean, it's in
see-
your
I
envelope.
see that, but quarterly, aren't there supposed to be a face up there on some kind of computer or somebody in-house that is going through all this with us? Because quarterly, we should have FaceTime. This was a big thing when we interviewed all them, and it's great to have that, but what does it say?
I will have them at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Sales taxes in the packet is slightly down from last year, but not within a margin to worry about. I think every county is slightly down compared. Yeah, inflation's taking its hit on everyone, so.
But, we talked about economic development a few minutes ago, and, one is to have tax base here with the buildings that are here. But, I look at those tax base numbers and I couldn't help but wonder if that Fleet Farm is built in Bayfield County, what impact is that going to have on our sales taxes? And so it's another reason to be more proactive on the economic development front is we want that sales tax in this county if we can.
Ideally, we benefit in other ways. Ideally, I mean, our county residents get employed. And I know the city is moving forward trying to build more housing. And we would get tax base through that respect. So, I mean, there are benefits,
Well, yeah, I agree. There's positives to Ashland, but having it here would add more positives.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just don't know where they put it because Highway 2 is kind of filled.
Dick, you're deep in thought. Okay. Oh,
What exactly is it costing the employees?
It is the total cost of health insurance. Well, for employees, I can tell you it costs $250 a month for family,
How much?
about $250 a month for a family plan. And then there's a $2,000 deductible. I know Sue might be on, she can tell you the exact amount, but it's about 250.
How are we doing on the wellness plan also?
M3's moving forward with that. I'll have them here next time to explain it to you. Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
let's go right into the verbal administration.
Okay, I got a few things. One, so met with the state legislature last week regarding Sanborn. So I'll give you an optimistic percentage of, optimistic is 50-50 that they're going to do anything to help us. Realistically, I don't see any energy to help anybody with the whole Sanborn mess. I don't think they're going to give us anything. The town of Sanborn was planning to issue tax refunds to tribal members this month using a loan from the Bureau of Public Land Commissioners. And the legislature put the kibosh to that. So there will be no loan to the town. And tribal members will not get paid back this month. It's the position of Ledge Council that nobody gets tax refunds, that the court decision does not provide for that. So the state is gonna basically say it's your problem, not ours. That is what I think is gonna happen. No, the legislature, furthermore, I think the legislature is gonna do something with the town of Sanborn, like dissolve it or something. And solve that problem that way. So they're going to throw it back on our laps. There's no energy and leadership in the legislature to do anything. That's my general feeling. But I'm going to say optimistically 50-50.
What does dissolving the town of Sanborn mean?
Whatever the state wants it to mean. They can say it's dissolved and put the properties in other municipalities, or they can do whatever. They can buy all the non-tribal properties and keep it under state control. They can do what they want. And so I don't think there's any conclusion yet of what they want to do because everything's been talked about.
So there's some properties for sale in the town of Sanborn, and you look at the real estate listings. I mean, it's a really strange time to look at listings in the town of Sanborn and have any idea of what to expect. So what if someone buys a property in the town of Sanborn? What does that mean going forward?
Well, if they're an enrolled member of the tribe, then it means they're fine. They're tax exempt and there's no issues. If they're not a tribal member, it means that your property taxes are uncertain. The value of your property is uncertain going forward. That you probably won't be able to get a mortgage to purchase it because of that uncertainty. So I don't know until the state passes its budget and comes up with a final solution. We don't know what's the future. It's all a guess.
Instead of being proactive, they're gonna meddle behind the way and see if they dissolve that town, then there's no place to go back after.
Right.
So
That's-
that's their, instead of actually making people's lives better, they're just gonna dink around with it. So.
Yeah, I'd expect another
Great.
10, 12 years of litigation.
Jesus.
I think that's where this whole thing's headed. The good news is we're not going to pay out anything. So So our bleeding has stopped. We just may not get paid back for what we already lost. So, yeah, it's a couple million. So I don't know what to tell you at this point. It's just, we're going to get the short end of the stick. So, other topics. We had the LaPointe hearing at the Department of Revenue last Friday. I think that went very well. Of course, if you ask the town, I'm sure they'll probably say the same thing. No, I think, no, honestly, I mean, they're making a very unique and novel argument, and I think it went very well. I think they contradicted themselves several times. That I don't think the town knows really what their argument is. They're arguing two different things. One to the Department of Revenue and one in their notice of claims. They're arguing two different things. In the end, the DOR has until sometime in June, 180 days from when they filed their initial complaint, which I think was January 26th or something like that. So the end of June, they have until to come up with a decision. In any case, I'm fairly confident that if it goes adversely, that the legislature is going to fix that, because it just messes up every single county in the state. So, and it'd make every county go bankrupt. So I'm pretty sure that I'm very, very sure that we're going to be fine on this one. Like in the 90 percentiles, like higher 90s, above the 95% confidence level. Let's see, then I guess this is an HR issue, but I'll be telling everybody on Thursday, so I'll just tell you now. Last week, we had our Kim Levasseur grievance hearing, and that was on Thursday and Friday last week. And the hearing officer reported back on Tuesday, and we won. So she has the option still of appealing to the county board within 10 days of the decision. The county board's only option is if they were to decide in our favor, they could only use the evidence presented and decide that the hearing office made a grievous error. So the standard is very high to overturn the grievance officer, who was John Carlson. Everybody knows. So I would give that more than a 50-50 chance that the county board will be seeing that. And so I would expect a special meeting to come up some point in the near future, and likely to be a somewhat lengthy meeting. So the hearing itself went 19 hours, and the county board does not have to watch all 19 hours. Yeah, I would never get through that. So that's the good news. And I think that's all the major stuff I have.
I have a question.
Yeah,
What's the status of the RFP on this building rehab?
it's out for right now. The deadline is next month.
Next
So,
month.
yeah. So I heard back from one company, and I just got an email from one back.
Okay.
So hopefully we get move forward.
Even if we just have the one, no.
Right now, just
hopefully
one.
We're gonna have more.
But yeah, people have to be able to come look at the building. And our problem is the outside is not conducive to looking at the building.
More so now than this winter.
Yeah. So that's why the deadline's in May, so they can actually have an opportunity to come outside and look and not get buried in snow.
Mhm.
But yeah, we want the project done by the end of summer. I think September 7th, I think is the deadline to finish,
This year?
to have the work done.
Well, if you get a couple of man lifts out there, they can go to town pretty quick.
Yeah,
It's not a huge building.
no, and it's not a huge project by any means. It's just time consuming and
It's going through all the paperwork before you get to do the work.
yeah.
Pat?
For the next finance meeting, could we have an agenda item to discuss the Sanborn case and possible implications, and perhaps possible opportunities to do something that might otherwise make things better than they would be? Because as we head into budget season, I got a lot of questions But maybe there's opportunities too to help mitigate, what otherwise might happen.
Well, yeah, there is, and I know increase in shared revenue is one thing that might, well, mitigate it for us. It
It's just
dep-
the next item.
Yeah,
next
yeah, I'll put,
agenda.
I have Sam on
Yes, we can
it,
talk about it.
it will, implications or something.
Well, as long as we're doing agenda items, I would like to follow up on this economic development thing.
Yep.
See where our current plan is, what it might be, and yeah,
So I'll just do an economic development / grant writing, so we could just continue the whole thing.
because
again.
I would like to bring the economic development up to the forefront here, because I think Mike and Steve has got us pretty well situated with our quarterly reports on our annual
Right.
on our annual budget. So, yeah.
Yeah, and they'll have a shorter report next time.
And I don't know, it might be premature, but capitalizing what Pat had just indicated before we start looking at 24 budget, I'm not sure if Mike and Steve is starting to formulate anything for that yet or not.
They're working on it right now. I think,
Okay,
yeah, they're gonna send out an email to department heads about capital budget
okay.
anytime now.
Go ahead, Laura.
I know everybody's winding into redoing their county plans. So like I said, I think that would be great. But I also think making sure there's notice to AEDC, to the chamber, how they fit in, and having like Crystal Rhodey from Northwest Regional come and actually give us an overview. Here's the things we're doing. So we have better information and so we can actually take action. Because like I said, we've talked about this. I think jumping on that plan is huge and needs to be done hoot-sweet.
Okay, and I can tell you that Lissa Radke at the extension has started doing preliminary work for the comp plan. So I can ask Crystal or Sheldon to come next time.
Yeah, if we're having preliminary work and such, it would be nice to know what that is, because we evidently don't know.
Yeah, I will ask Lissa to come too.
Breaking new ground, or, going in directions that we've not gone for a long time.
And if you want, I can keep this economic development thing just as a standard agenda item.
Please.
Yeah, and that way, if you have something to talk about, you can talk about it.
With that, anybody have an idea for our next meeting date?
See.
And I'd also like to add, I know we canceled our February meeting. I would have really appreciated had we gotten an email asking for dates that work for us, because I had something else planned for this date that I had to reschedule, and it just turned into a domino effect for me and other people on rescheduling things.
We scheduled this at the March meeting.
We didn't have a March.
Yeah,
meeting,
we did.
Did we?
Yeah.
We had we canceled the
Oh,
February.
you're right.
The last meeting we had was in January, I thought.
Yeah, you're right.
And so this was sent out without asking us for dates, unless I'm wrong. And it just really,
So let's ask for dates right now.
yeah,
So,
but if, in case we cancel one again, let's ask for dates.
May 25th. That'd be the Thursday before Memorial Day. That work, Pat? Lori, do you have that May 25th?
I do.
PMA. All right, I gotta look and see what you're talking about. Oh, this is just something PMA sent us that may not have gone into the packet, but at least it's just information for you.
Okay.
So May 25th?
Yeah, May 25th. And Lori, can you please put that on the calendar as soon as possible?
I will.
Good.
And if there's an alternate date, we'll send out an email. If something comes up.
Yes.
Yeah, before we adjourn, one of the things I'd like to have Dan do, and if you want, I'll go with you. I've been around the planet an awful long time and I've seen how in the past, we've had problems with the AADC. And it wasn't the organization so much as it was the board. For years and years and years, the businesses that were established here had an established rate of pay. They, through AADC, discouraged other companies from coming here that were going to pay more than they were getting at the established businesses. So this is a big factor in economic development. What we have to do, I think, is approach AADC and see if they're still operating like that. We don't know who comes to them asking for or relocate or whatever. And the big difference, and Pat hit on it, the big difference is between AADC and Northwest Regional. Northwest Regional, when they look for somebody, say, to come in here and relocate, first thing they want to know is what you paying, which is a big item as far as the standard of living goes and economic development. If you get a company in here that's paying minimum wage, what the hell's the point? So I think we should do that sometime, Dan, set up a meeting and I've seen this happen over and over and over the years, and it's part of the reason why we are where we're at. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk and set up a meeting with Carter.
Aren't either one or both of you supposed to be on the board for AADC?
Yeah, I get the emails from them for it.
So nobody's attending the meetings? Because I
No.
thought there was a county board chair seat saved for the county board on there.
Yeah.
Are you going to the meetings?
All right, I'll get that for you too.
If someone's talking, you need to use your microphone.
I'll make
Last
a-
item, Ron motions to adjourn.
Pat will second.
Pat seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, motion ended. All right. Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
At 11:17.